Shalom, shalom. I would first like to begin the lesson off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Korash. Double honors unto the apostles, double honors unto the elder bishops at Great Millstone who have taught me this truth through the spirit and the power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace and salutations to the brothers out there pushing this truth, the 100% truth out there on the highways and the byways, the Akim, as well as the few sisters out there listening and learning. To you also I say shalom. It is your brother Haratazaka Barbecker with another lesson through the spirit. And I'm seeing that where I'm at, since I just moved to a different city, don't have no camp up here, so I will be camping by myself. And didn't want to take that risk just because I don't know the town that well. So nonetheless, wanted to put out something, Lord willing, edifying, just due to my circumstances right now. But like I said, man, just moved into a new crib. Don't gotta stand. I really want to be able to do this lesson on my laptop. It'll be a little bit easier to do it that way. But I'm just working with what I got right now. So this is gonna be a lesson that I've been holding off on for a while, I'm gonna be honest. And the Lord said out, hey man, when you had a spirit and you like avoiding the lesson, it's not really that I was avoiding it, but kind of was just pushing it off, I'm gonna be honest. Not really, kind of forgot about it too. I was supposed to have did this lesson in April. So that just goes to show you that this lesson is well overdue, but nonetheless, the Lord wanted it to come out. And I got some inspiration for this lesson yesterday. When I was at the art museum yesterday with my lady. So that being said, man, I'm gonna go ahead and also I've been reading the book of Second Maccabees as well, so I've been learning about this stuff too, Hellenization of the Israelites. So I'm just learning about it more and more, reading about it. Also gave me a little bit of inspiration to do this lesson as well. But I'm gonna just go ahead and come into this real quick. So this is how I know where I'm reading from. When it comes to information like this, you gotta chew the meat and spit the bones out, as the brother would say, because there's no telling, like, when it comes to this stuff, because this is out the art museum, St. Louis Art Museum, there's no telling how true and what's falsified and what's not. But I'm gonna go ahead and flip my camera real quick and show y'all, so if y'all want to, y'all can take a screenshot. Roman Empire, and was pretty much the world power after the ancient Western Roman Empire fell. It was when we came into rulership for roughly 1,000-year period, which you can see on here. It says 330 AD to 1453 AD. So this is a time period that they call the Dark Ages, but it was a time period when we were in rulership as a people. And I'm just go ahead and get a precept real quick, just so y'all I can show y'all where it lines up at in the scriptures. The book of Revelation, the 20th chapter, the first verse, it says, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand." And the bottomless pit represents Europe, because that's where the ancient Roman Empire fell, and where the Edomites lost their dominion for a moment. It says, "And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years," right? So and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nation no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season, right? So that's talking about once the Western Roman Empire fell, they lost their dominion, you know what I'm saying, their rulership on the earth. And we came into a period of rulership, which is known as the Dark Ages. That was pretty much them being cast into a bottomless pit. They weren't able to deceive the nations anymore because they weren't in rulership, okay? But they would be loosed out of this 1,000-year period where they lost their rulership. See, Esau Edom tries to make it to where they just rule forever and there wasn't anybody else that had rulership on the earth. Or at least it wasn't no Jakes or no people of color, Israelites really, that had rulership. But yeah, that's what the bottomless pit represents, this Europe and the fact that they lost their dominion. It says, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them and judged. Well, I really don't have to go into this because it's talking about another 1,000-year period during the kingdom of heaven. But I made my point is what I'm trying to say. So after we lost our dominion around the 1400s, around the time that Cristobal Colon sailed the ocean blue and founded Americas, even though it was already inhabited by the Northern Kingdom, that was called the Renaissance era, or the rebirth. And they started to go around, you know, paint the likeness of the images, stuff like that, rewrite history, make it seem like they were just always in rulership. You know what I'm saying? Take paintings of us and whitewash them pretty much. So I'll get a precept concerning that. Oh, I already got it pulled up. I was just reading this yesterday. First Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, and the 47th verse, it says, Then they fasted that day, and put on sackcloth, and cast ashes upon their heads, and rent their clothes, and laid open the books, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images, right? So those images, you know, these images and whatnot are coming out, it's being exposed, the truth is being exposed of who was really in rulership, who really came from royalty, you know, who was actually had rulership and was kings and queens and whatnot, which was us. And they tried to hide this information from us as a people, man. But the Lord is still making it come out, because you cannot hide what the Lord have made. So, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and read this though. The Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire. When Constantine the Great consolidated power in the early 14th century AD, the Roman Empire was forever changed. And I believe that Constantine was a Jake. I'm not completely sure on that. Don't take my word on that. But I have heard brothers say that before, that Constantine was an Israelite. Like I said, I don't know enough to speak on that. Says Christianity, which we know that the Israelites were called Christians first at Antioch. That was during the Roman Empire. But Constantine pretty much introduced Christianity on a mass scale. Christianity became the official religion. Greek became the language of the administration, and Byzantium renamed Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul, Turkey. For several centuries, the Byzantines maintained links to old Roman ways, and they continued to employ familiar artistic motifs and the naturalistic styles often associated with ancient Greek and Roman art. It says a particularly important moment in the history of Christian art is depicted on the gold coin displayed in the case at the left. Well, this is supposed to be a coin of Yahweh Shai. It says a bearded image of a Mashiach Pantocrator, which is supposed to mean ruler of all. I'm assuming that's in Greek. Inspired by earlier Greco-Roman images of the god Zeus, dominates the obverse front. In his left hand, Hamashiach holds the Book of Gospels. His right hand is raised in a gesture of benediction. On the reverse, the Emperor Justinian, rendered at a smaller scale, identifies himself as a servant of Hamashiach. This imagery represents the first time in the history of the Byzantine Empire that Yahushua Mashiach appears as the preeminent image or coinage, with the emperor relegated to subservient status on the back. I just want to go back to that first Maccabees 3rd chapter. It's just an example of this, right? These people are so bold that they painted the likeness of Yahushua Mashiach, so-called Jesus Christ. So that just goes to show you that has happened throughout history. That's a good and the most common example I can give you, because if you go to the scriptures, it clearly states that Yahushua was of a dark skin tone, darker than myself. It says that this imagery, as the Byzantine Empire flourished further east, the followers of an emergent religion, Islam, would begin to challenge Byzantine territories. After centuries of conflict, Muslims would ultimately succeed in toppling the empire with the capture of Constantinople in 1453. Now, let me look up something real quick. You also, during that time period, I'm pretty sure that was during that time period. You had, well, Mansa Musa too, but he was a Jake as well. He just considered himself to be, I believe, Muslim, but he was a Jake. And they were in Mali during the Mali Empire, which is a smaller empire on the western coast of Africa, which that was Israelites over there too. But I was gonna say the time of the Moors, I'm pretty sure that was during that was during the time period that we was ruling too. Because, you know, Jake is always going off, man. You know, they thought they was one thing or another thing. Muslim inhabitants of North Africa, Spain, Portugal, parts of Sicily, consisting of mixed Arab, Berber, and African origins, right? But these are Jakes, though, man. If you ever seen Othello, the biopic of Lawrence Fishburne, part of the curses, you will be a proverb and a byword among all the nations. So we've been called African Americans, Afro Americans, Negroes, Moors, Swarthy, whatever, but never Israelites. But I'm coming to my point though, because I understand that the Byzantine Empire was during the end of the Roman Empire, and we're talking about the Hellenization of the so-called Jews or Israelites. So this is where I got the inspiration to do the lesson and talk about it. Now that I've rambled long enough. So this is a bust that they had in the in the art museum. This is a bust that they had of a woman, and I looked at her, and I was telling my lady before this already that, you know, they used to cut the noses off, break the noses off, and stuff like that of people, because it's a distinct difference between our nose shape and Edomite nose shape. But this is what I'm going to be reading, because that's what it was about. It says the Greek Hellenistic period, and I said, and that just confirmed what I was already thinking in my head, because I seen that her nose is broken off. I'm like, oh shit, this lady was most likely a Jake. You know what I'm saying? She most likely was a Jake woman. And then I got to reading it. It said Greek Hellenistic period, head of a woman, mid 4th to 1st century BC, marble. It says the veil worn by this figure identifies her as a woman. Ancient Greek texts recount that upper class women were meant to exercise modesty by staying indoors and covering up when they left the confines of their home. This head illustrates additional embellishments that were routinely used in sculpture. The ears are pierced for the attachment of separate metal earrings, and traces of color indicate that the hair was once painted, which it was a little bit, it was kind of reddish. You all probably couldn't notice that, but it was a little red. It says the back of the head is less finely carved than the front. This aspect suggests that this sculpture and its now lost freestanding body were placed in a niche or against a wall where where the back would not have been visible. Now, when I first started reading that, I actually read the paragraph before I seen the Hellenistic part. I said to myself, when it said ancient Greek texts recount that upper class women were meant to exercise modesty by staying indoors and covering up when they left the confines of their home, I told my girl, I was like, those are our customs, right? Our women are supposed to conduct and adorn themselves modestly, Salaki. This is 1 Timothy, the 9th chapter, and the 2nd verse, Salaki. 1 Timothy, the 2nd chapter, and the 9th verse. It says, in like manner also that women adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with braided hair, or gold, or pearls, or costly array, but which becometh a woman professing godliness with good works. Okay? And then also, let's go to the Apocrypha too. Well, we can go to this. Let's get shamefacedness. Because I always say this, man. Anyone that's watched my lessons before, I do a lot of lessons on women. These women nowadays, they don't respect or love themselves. And this is going to show you why. I've gotten the word shamefacedness in the blue letter.
Strong's G127, Eidos.
So it says a sense of shame or honor, modesty, bashfulness, reverence, regard for others, or respect. Salaki. There's not a lot of women in our society nowadays who conduct themselves in shamefacedness, right? They don't dress modestly. They're not quiet. They don't follow after a man's lead, unless it's their boss, of course. So if you aren't shamefaced, or you don't have shamefacedness about yourself or modesty, it means you don't respect yourself. These women back in those days, they respected themselves because they followed after Yahweh Shai. Or they followed after their husbands, one of the two. Let me get this. So like 1 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter. 1 Corinthians, no, it's not the 3rd chapter. I'm tripping. I must have been 1 Corinthians, the 8th chapter. Well, shall I bear with me, please? The 11th 11th chapter. I'm tripping. It's a lot. 1 Corinthians 1 Corinthians 11, verse 15, it says, "But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given her for a covering." That's a lot. Let me. That's what I was thinking about. That or a Mitri too. Because a lot of these women in Jacob's trouble are going to cover themselves up. We know that through the scriptures as well. Or more so a rap. But anyways, nonetheless, I'm not going to stay on that too much. Yeah, when I read that, I was like, dang, it's from the Hellenistic period. And it made sense to me, you know? So I want to get this. I'm going to read this. This is from Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not a reliable source. Anyways, this is from Wikipedia. It says Hellenistic Judaism, which Judaism is something that the Edomites made up, Amalek. Judaism has nothing to do with ancient Hebrew Israelites, but that's what they're calling it. Okay. Hellenistic, because this is what popped up when I looked up Hellenization of Israelites. It says Hellenistic Judaism was a form of Judaism in classical antiquity that combined Israelite religious tradition with elements of Hellenistic culture and religion. Until the early Muslim conquest of the Eastern Mediterranean, the main centers of the Hellenistic Judaism were Alexandria in Egypt and Antioch in Syria, which is where a lot of Christians, Israelites were. It says the two main Greek urban settlements of the Middle East, which is Western Asia, the Levant, and North Africa, both founded in the end of the 4th century BCE in the wake of the conquest of Alexander of Macedon. Hellenistic Judaism also existed in Jerusalem during the Second Temple period, where there was a conflict between Hellenizers and traditionalists, right? So the Hellenization of the Israelites was Israelites who lived in the land of, who lived in Greece, right? Who lived under their rule during the Greek Empire. And they took on the ways of their enemies, of their captives, the Greeks, and they started going after the Greek way of life, consider themselves to be Greek, you know, and their nationality, forgetting and doing away with their Israelite heritage and completely becoming indoctrinated or assimilated into their culture. It says the major literary product of the content between Second Temple Judaism and Hellenistic culture is the Septuagint translation of the Hebrew Bible from Biblical Hebrew and Biblical Aramaic to Koine Greek, specifically Jewish, or I don't want to say that word, Israelite Koine Greek or Jew Koine Greek. mentionable are also the philosophic and ethical treatises of Philo in the 2nd century, and the present causes and the precise causes are not fully understood. Following the Roman community in Alexandria, as well as those in Cyrenaica and Cyprus, were eradicated. So diaspora actually comes from the word dispersion, and that just goes back to us being scattered amongst the nations via the curses that are set in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. Deuteronomy 28:64 says, and Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people. There's just no, you know what I'm saying, this diaspora revolt is just letting you know who these people were. It says, and Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. All right, so us being dispersed, and this is talking about the diaspora revolt, also known as the Second Israelite-Roman War, which I'm pretty sure this is a lesson that my pops and I did last month or 2 months ago. But we did a lesson about the Roman-Jewish wars. You should go check that out. But going back to that, we're gonna go into the word scattering, you know. They had us worshiping gods like Zeus, Hercules, Nike, what's the other ones? All the bullshit. Ares, stuff like that, man. It says to scatter, be dispersed, be scattered. To be scattered, to be spread abroad, to scatter, right? To dash to pieces, to shatter. The Lord scattered us amongst the nations as a part of our punishment. That's why it's funny when that one nigga on the comment board talking about some us being dispersed, us being scattered wasn't a part of the curses. Okay. Anyways, that word diaspora comes from the word disperse. So like, this is Ezekiel 20:19. I am Yahweh, the Most High Power. So like, 22. Nevertheless, I withdrew my hand and wrought for my name's sake, that it should not be polluted in the sight of the heathen, in whose sight I brought them forth. I lifted up my hand unto them also in the wilderness, that I would scatter them among the heathen and disperse them through the countries, right, throughout the four corners of the earth. Because they had not executed my judgments, but had despised my statutes, and had polluted my Sabbaths, and their eyes were after their fathers' idols. Wherefore I gave them also statutes that were not good, and judgments whereby they should not live. And I polluted them in their own gifts, in that they caused to pass through the fire all that openeth the womb, that I might make them desolate to the end, that they might know that I am Yahweh. Right? So you have people who are still indoctrinated and stuck in this Greek way of life, still following after false idols, still not calling on the name of Yahweh Shemel Shah, because those are the same people who competed and participated in those athletic events. You look at the Divine Nine, the D9, the Greek fraternities, the sororities and the sisters, the sororities and the fraternities that they have in college, especially at HBCUs, because I went to one and I know how that shit is. You know, you have the Omega Psi Phi and the Kappa Alpha Psi and the Alpha Phi Alpha and Iota, whatever the fuck they shit is, they not known. Phi Beta Sigma, right? And then you have Alpha Phi Alpha, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Zeta Phi Beta. Oh, what's the other bitch's name? Delta Sigma Theta and Sigma Gamma Rho, right? So these are 9, right? These are 9 fraternities and sororities that so-called black people indoctrinate themselves with. That's just them going back to the Greek ways of life, right? Because how could you say you're a Christian, but you're following after Greek customs? That's not your heritage. Or how could you say you're Israelite doing those things, right? Because I know somebody who did that, right? You consider and call yourself an Israelite. You know the true names of Yahweh, Shem, Shah, but you're still bound down to Greek gods through the sororities. So you follow after false idols and false gods. That's not a part of our heritage. That's pagan right there. I don't want to get this word dispersed. Their fan cast away, went out, disperse, compass, spread, be scattered, be dispersed. To scatter, to fan, went out. To be scattered, be dispersed. To scatter, disperse, right? Pretty much sending them out to all different lands, languages, and people. Why? Because our people sought to be like the heathen nations. They want to be like the heathen nations. They want to follow after the heathen nations, right? They want to follow after their customs. I was just thinking about that today when I was at the airport. I was at O'Hare this morning. And all I could think to myself, I seen a fucking trans freak, whatever the fuck. And I'm like, bro, this is what happens. This is the consequences of our actions, is what I was thinking to myself. These are the consequences of our actions. Our people want to decide they want to be like the heathen nations. So the Lord gave us into the hand of our enemies, right? You want to fall after them so much you like how their ways are? I'm going to show you how their ways are. I'm going to let them put you in subjection. And I was like, fuck. I said, I can't wait till we receive salvation, bro. I can't. Man, that shit is sad. All right, let's get into the point of the lesson, and then I'm gonna pull up a graphic for y'all too. So we can always go to the go-to, where the introduction of the Greek customs came from. The book of 2nd Maccabees, the 4th verse and the 7th, Salaki. The book of 2nd Maccabees, the 4th chapter and the 7th verse in the Good News translation. Later, when King Seleucus Kingdom, died, and Antiochus, known as Epiphanes, which he was the most violent and most treacherous Greek king or ruler towards the Israelites, which is why the Lord has a special, gonna have a special meeting with that devil. But anyways, the Lord plagued him once before, but it's not over with, buddy. Matter of fact, I wanna get this real quick. I'm gonna read this. I gotta get my 1611 out for this. I want to say this is at the beginning of the chapter. Yep. So this is the book. This is at the beginning of Second Maccabees at the first chapter. You know, it has headings and whatnot, outlining what that section of verses is going to talk about. So it says, a letter of the Jews from Jerusalem to them of Egypt to thank the Most High Power for the death of Antiochus. Which I can get that as well, but I'm going to get this first. We can go back to 2nd Maccabees, the first chapter. It says, later when King Seleucus died and Antiochus, known as Epiphanes, became king, Jason, the brother of Onias, he slaughtered a lot of Israelites, by the way. I'm just going to let y'all know that right now. Became high priest by corrupt means. He went to see the king and offered him 27,000 pounds of silver, which that's millions of dollars nowadays, with 6,000 more pounds to be paid later. Jason also offered him an additional 11,250 pounds of silver for the authority to establish a stadium where young men could train and to enroll the people of Jerusalem as citizens of Antioch. The king gave his approval, and just as soon as Jason took over the office of high priest, he made the people of Jerusalem change to the Greek way of life, right? That's why you have these people that have legacies and all this other stuff, and they don't realize that the first Sigma Pi Phi. They don't realize that was the first Jake or African American fraternity, which is also known as the Boule, the Black Boule. Them niggas do wicked and demonic shit, bro. They're devil worshippers. And when I say devil worshippers, I mean the spiritual demon Satan. But they also worship Esau Edom too, you know, because fucking coon ass niggas. But yeah, man, that's that shit that LeBron got tattooed on his chest, bro. I've seen that shit. I've seen the whole mural they have for that shit in the National African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. Right? I could put those pictures up, but I'm going to stay on the task at hand right now. This is more important. It says, verse 11, he began by abolishing the favors that John had secured for the Jews from previous Syrian kings. John was the father of Eupolemus, who later went to Rome to make an alliance and to establish ties of friendship. Jason also did away with our Israelite customs or Judite customs and introduced new customs that were contrary to our law, right? The doctrines of men, the commandments of men. So he pretty much defied us. Ain't no pretty much. He defied us as a people. It says, with great enthusiasm, he built a stadium near the Temple Hill and led our finest young men to adopt the Greek custom of participating in athletic events. Because of the unrivaled wickedness of Jason, that ungodly and illegitimate high priest, the craze for the Greek way of life and for foreign customs reached such a point that even the priests lost all interest in their sacred duties. They lost interest in the temple services and neglected the sacrifices. Just as soon as the signal was given, they would rush off to take part in the games that were forbidden by our law. And you know what's funny about that is when I was reading up about the Hellenistic Judaism, and it talked about the Septuagint translation of the Hebrew Bible, and I clicked on it, I'm like, what is that talking about? And it's just talking about some of these books that were, or Salakia. I know what it was. Why did I delete that? Fuck. Salakia. Because I looked it up yesterday. Let me see. Make sure I can find it. I looked up Hellenization of the Israelites. Lord willing, it comes back up. Maybe. But I was reading this off of Gemini, Google Gemini. The Hellenization of the Israelites, often referred to as you see how they try to throw that shit in there though? The Jewish people. They're not the same people, bro. Began when Alexander the Great conquered the Near East in the 4th century BCE, leading to a deep cultural clash between traditional Israelite law and Greek law, language. Well, for the sake of the video, I'm gonna say Judite law, just so we know we're talking about the Southern Kingdom. Judite law and Greek life, language, and institutions. This era introduced widespread Greek language, the building of gymnasiums, and a major split within Judite society between those who adopted Greek ways and those who fiercely rejected them. Cultural and social changes, language and daily life. Many Jews began to speak Greek, leading to the creation of the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, for communities living outside of Judea. Greek institutions, the introduction of the gymnasium and Greek civic structures changed local education, fashion, and social habits. Social division. Wealthy and upper class urban Jews, including some high priests, embraced Greek names and customs, so like you have wicked kings like that in the Book of Kings, right? I can't speak too much on that because I haven't read it yet, but those same people are on the earth today, once again, these rulers that we have, or you could say high figures or role models in society, that's Israelites and Jakes. LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and them LeBron James, Michael Jordan, who else? Will Smith, shit like that, Denzel Washington, Jay-Z, including some high priests, embraced Greek names and customs, while rural and pious traditionalists viewed these trends as a threat to their covenant with the Most High Power, right? They weren't sellouts. Conflict and revolt, religious persecution under the Seleucid ruler Antiochus IV Epiphanes in the 2nd century BCE, restrictions turned violent. He banned Judite practices like the Sabbath and circumcision, and desecrated the Second Temple in Jerusalem. The Maccabean Revolt, which I haven't gotten to that story yet. A traditionalist Judite family, the Maccabees, which is, I'm pretty sure that translates to the hammer, led a successful armed rebellion against this forced religious suppression. Hanukkah, the victory led to the purification of the temple, an event celebrated today through the festival of Hanukkah. Despite long-term results, impact, and it's fine, I'm not gonna get to that. Long-term results is niggas we're in captivity. Going back to verse 2 Maccabees 4:13, because of the unrivaled wickedness of Jason, that ungodly and illegitimate high priest, the craze for the Greek way of life and foreign customs reached such a point that even the priests lost all interest in their sacred duties. They lost interest in the temple services and neglected the sacrifices. Just as soon as the signal was given, they would rush off to take part in the games that were forbidden by our law. They did not care about anything their ancestors had valued. They prized only Greek honors. Let's go to the book of Acts, the 7th chapter, the 51st verse. Ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, meaning heathenistic in their ways. It says, ye do always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do ye. Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted? And they have slain them which shew before of the coming of the just one, of whom ye have been now the betrayers and murderers, who have received the law by the disposition of angels and have not kept it. That's these people, the ones that were Hellenized, that assimilated into the Greek way of life. And this turned out to be the source of all their problems. And this turned out, they did not care about anything their ancestors have valued. They prized only Greek honors, right? Let's go to the book of John. See, this is why you have these people now in our society, right? LeBron, Carmelo, whatever. Israelites, Jakes that are up high above. They desire the praises of men more than the praises of Yahweh Hashem Shai. That's why 2/3 of our people are going to be destroyed, because we have leaders who not telling the people that the Israelites. Yeah, you have people like Nas or Carmelo who have mentioned it or hinted at it, but they're not giving up their riches. They're not going to give up their fame or their status that they have. So them niggas, you don't get no reward for that. John 12:43, for they love the praise of men more than the praise of the Most High Power. All right, let's continue. And this turned out to be the source of all their problems. So I keep saying that. 2 Maccabees 4:16. And this turned out to be the source of all their troubles. For the very people whose ways they admired and whose customs they tried to imitate became their enemies and oppressed them. It is a serious thing to disregard the Most High Power's law, as you will see from the following events. Right? And you can just read the rest of this. At your own leisure. But it led to a few high priests being deleted. Now I'm going to go back up to 1 Maccabees. The second Maccabees, the first chapter and the 8th verse. Jason and his men set fire to the temple gates and slaughtered innocent people. Then we prayed to the Lord, and he answered our prayers. So we sacrificed animals, gave offerings of grain, lit the lamps in the temple, and set out the sacred loaves. This is why we urge you to celebrate in the month of Kislev a festival similar to the Festival of Shelters, written in the year 188. It says, a letter to Aristobulus, the death of King Antiochus. From the Jews of Jerusalem and Judea, the Judite Senate and Judas, to Aristobulus, a descendant of priests and the teacher of King Ptolemy, and to the Jews in Egypt, greetings and good health. We thank the Most High Power because he saved us from great danger. We were like men ready to fight against a king. But the Most High Power drove the enemy from our holy city. When King Antiochus arrived in Persia, his army seemed impossible to defeat. But they were cut to pieces in the temple of the goddess Nanea by an act of treachery on the part of her priests. King Antiochus had gone to the temple with some of his most trusted advisors so that he might marry the goddess and then take away most of the temple treasures as a wedding gift. After the priests had laid out the treasure, he and a few of his men went into the temple to collect it. But the priests closed the doors behind him and stoned him and his men from trapdoors hidden in the ceiling. Then they cut up the bodies and threw the heads to the people outside. Praise the Most High Power for punishing those evil men. Praise him for everything. You know how bad of a person you gotta be to celebrate somebody's death? They were celebrating because of how wicked this nigga was. They celebrated his death. I want to go to neither Jew nor Greek because people get very confused when it comes to that. I ain't mean to push that, Salaki. Galatians, the 3rd chapter. Galatians 3:22, but the scripture hath concluded all under sin, that the promise by faith of Yahushua Mashiach might be given to them that believe. But before faith came, we were kept under the law, shut up unto the faith which should afterwards be revealed. The law was only given to the Israelites. Let's get there real quick. What is sin? Sin is the transgression of the law, meaning you broke the law. You have to be given the law in order to break it, right? Amos 3:1, hear this word that Yahweh hath spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. Let's go back. Galatians 3:23, which slide. Verse 24, therefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Hamashiach, that we might be justified by faith. But after that faith is come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster. For ye are all the children of the Most High Power by faith in Yahushua Mashiach. And that's talking to the Israelites. For as many of you as have been baptized into a Mashiach have put on a Mashiach. There is not neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female. For ye are all one in Hamashiach Yahushua. You have to understand the Hellenization of the Israelites in order to understand that scripture, because that can be taken out of context. And it is a stumbling block on the people who don't know what that means, right? They took out a whole portion of the Bible. You go from the Egyptian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the kingdom, the split kingdom, the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire. Then it just fucking skips the Greek Empire and jumps to the Roman Empire. So there's a lot of stuff and a lot of accounts that people don't consider because it's in the Apocrypha. That's a whole empire that you're missing, a whole history book. But they took that out because they knew if people had a hold of that, it would easily identify who the fuck Esau Edom was. But yeah, so if you go into this word Greek, it says Hellas, the Hellenization of the Israelites. That's why it says neither Jew, so the ones, the Israelites who still consider themselves to be Israelites, whether you called yourself a Judite, a Jew, or you called yourself a Greek, even though the ones that call themselves the Greeks, the Hellenized ones, were still Israelites, they just didn't claim because they want to fall after the ways of our enemies, which is why we're in the situation we're in now. Well, if we go to that word, and if ye be Hamashiach, then are ye Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. So people always say, oh, well, there is Gentile salvation. You got to understand which Gentile is talking about, because you also have, there's words in the scriptures that say Gentile, but it goes back to Hellas or Helen, which is also talking about the Greeks, Israelites. But it's Gentiles as in the New Testament and Gentiles within the Old Testament. So it says Greek and it says Hellene right here.
Strong's G 1672. Hellene. Hellene.
A Greek either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. That's one entry. Second one is, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own, which, as you can see, we just disputed that. Because, of course, this Esau Edom technology, they want to try and trip you up. We just clearly read that it was Israelites who made the Greek way their customs, which is why they took the Apocrypha, once again, they took the Apocrypha out of the Bible. If your spirit receives it, your spirit receives it, but I don't know how much plainer I can make it. Because what they said just contradicted itself, did it not? We read in the Apocrypha, the Israelites made the Greek customs their ways. Then it says right here, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own way. But the Israelites, the Jews, made it their way. They made the language, the customs, and the learning of the Greeks their way. Anyways, I digress. That's why I say you got to chew the meat and spit the bones out. The primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. Let me see if I can get this. So I got the word Gentile, and it also goes back to Helen, right? And that's in the book of Romans, the 2nd chapter and the 9th verse, right? But I'm gonna go ahead and get this real quick. Hosea 8:8, Israel is swallowed up. Now shall they be among the Gentiles as a vessel wherein is no pleasure. Let's get that. That word Gentiles goes to goy, which means nation or people, right? Nation, people, usually of non-Hebrew people, of descendants of Abraham, of Israel. And then if you go to 1 Corinthians 12:1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. Wherefore I give you to understand that no man speaking by the Spirit of the Most High Power called Yahushua accursed, and that no man can say that Yahushua is the Lord but by the Holy Spirit. So, Gentiles, right? Israelite foreigners. In this context, ethnos, the human family, a tribe, nation, or people. In the Old Testament, foreign nations not worshiping the true God, pagans, Gentiles, heathens. And in the other entry, Paul uses the term for Gentile Christians, right? Which we know that the Christians were Israelites who were first called Christians at Antioch as a way to mock them for following after Yahushua Mashiach, because there are people on the scene that did not believe that he was the Son of Man. Let me see if I can find this. So I might pull this out too. Don't have much more on that. If I can find it. A Hellenistic Israelite were Israelites by the flesh, but kept the traditions and the languages of the Greeks. There were who Galatians 3:28 and Colossians 3:11, there's neither Jew nor Greek, were written about, not the Edomite Greeks of that time. This is what I'm reading. And this is actually from a book. I can't remember what the book is, what the name of the book is. But brothers have done lessons on the book before, on that book before. It says, Greek-speaking Jews. Bronze statue of Greek-speaking Jew with dreadlocks dated about 200 BC. Often called Hellenists, these Israelites had conformed to the customs of the Greeks. Some, however, returned to the Levitical covenant. So I can back this up. Some, however, returned to the Levitical covenant. Some did not, and some repented in Hamashiach. John 12:20. And there were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast. Verse 21. The same came therefore to Philip, which was of Bethsaida of Galilee, and desired him, saying, Sir, we would see Hamashiach. Acts 16:1. Then came he to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewess, and believed, but his father was a Greek. Romans 10:12, for there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. If you didn't know about the Apocrypha and you were just reading the Bible thinking it's the Old Testament and the New Testament, and there's nothing in between, you're just reading it as this, you got two pieces welcome in the human nations. Lord willing, this is edifying to those out there listening and watching. I'm going to close it off there by giving all stone once again who have taught me this truth through the spirit and the power of Yahweh Shah. And until next time, I say Shalom Israel. Shalom. And as always, one day closer to the kingdom, man. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Shalom Israel. Shalom.